In today's video, we're going to be creating this really cool looking review widget, and it's going to have some really awesome animations that include some kind of complex JavaScript. And best of all, I'm going to be doing this entirely from scratch for the very first time, which means you're going to see all the mistakes I make, how I overcome them, and how I think about a complicated problem like this. Welcome back to Web Dev Simplified. My name is Kyle, and my job is to simplify the web for you so you can start building your dream project sooner. And today we're going to be creating this really cool design. And like I said, it's going to be my very first time trying to solve this problem. Now, this is a design that I found on UI Design Daily. I'll include a link to the actual design itself in the description if you're curious to check it out. But I've ported over the Figma file so we can take a look at all of the important information. Also, before we got started with this, I just took the SVG icon for the magnifying glass as well as the star, and I just have those pulled into our project. You can see them on the side here. And also I imported the fonts that are used in this project from Google Fonts. So I just went on to Google Fonts, I clicked on the different fonts that we use and the different weights that we use, and I just copied this code over. So our fonts are going to be Merriweather and Poppins. That's all that you really need to know to get started with this project. And what I want to do at first is just kind of think about how I want to lay this out. The first thing I want to do is kind of create this card icon that you can see this is in. It's like a widget card icon. So we can just come in here. I'm going to create a div that has a class of card, and that's going to be essentially this section. I'm actually going to delete this background here because really all I care about is this circled section right here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to include this header section, this search bar, this bottom section, and then this review section. And I kind of am planning on making most of this using Flexbox because I feel like this is a really good candidate for Flexbox since everything should be flexible and scale to different screen sizes. So we have our card, then we're going to have like our header on our card. Below our header, we're going to have our search bar. Then we're going to have our review section, and then we're going to have that like review button. And right now I'm just kind of writing this out as placeholder content. Like obviously this review button is probably going to be a button and this probably won't be called a header, but I'm just trying to think through how this thing is going to work. So we're going to have a card, which is like a vertical stack essentially that has these 4 different sections, and each of these 4 sections is going to be its own type of stack. For example, this section right here at the top, you can see here is just a horizontal Flexbox container with some space in between the content. So we have our text on the left and then our other content on the right. So let's go ahead and actually first style out our card. So I'm going to include a style sheet for that. So let's link a style sheet, styles.css, and let's just create that file. There we go. So first thing I want to do, and I do this in pretty much every single project that I work on, is I select all of my elements and I change the box sizing to border box just so we can have easier time styling everything. And then something that I want to do is select my body, and I want to change the font family here. Whoops, font family. And I want to change the font family to Poppins because that is our default font for every single thing in our application. The only thing that uses the Merriweather font is this what others think about product. And the way we can see that is if you're in the Figma design, we can open this up and kind of look on the side, and you can see here the text is Merriweather for this. While if I select any of these other elements, they're all using Poppins. So you can see that by default, all of our font is Poppins except for this one header section. Let me just hide that away and bring this back up. So now what we can do is actually write out our card. So .card here. And I need to go back into this Figma file. I'm actually going to expand this quite a bit. And we're going to open up and take a look at all the different styles applied to this frame right here. This is our card essentially. And if we look, you can see that we have a background color, which is this fill. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to say background color. I'm going to paste in that fill right here. And I'm probably going to turn some of these into CSS variables because it makes sense to share them as variables. But for now, that's what we're going to do with our background color. Also, what I want to do is I want to get the padding. And if we look here, it looks like the padding is 84 on all sides. And you can see that if we scroll up to this section, you can see this left and right padding. Maybe I'll zoom in my screen a little bit. Whoops, zoom in this window. Okay, sorry, I'm back. I was having a hard time figuring out how to zoom my screen, but now I've gotten it zoomed in. So you can see that 84 is the padding on the right and on the top. So like the left and right and the top and bottom both have a padding of 84. So we know that we have a padding here of 84 pixels. And if you were working on a larger scale project, I would break up these like pixel amounts into like a scale of sizes, because I'm guessing whoever designed this used like a specific scale, and this 84 pixels is just one number in that scale. So I would break these numbers into a scaling system so that way you can use it. That way you don't also have like 82 pixels of padding somewhere else. So right there, if we do this, now we have our card. And if I just save and I open this up with live server, you should hopefully see just a small little rectangle that is that size. As you can see up here, it's really hard to see. I'm going to change our background color of our body here to like a really darkish color. So now we can kind of see what that card looks like. It's this section right here at the very top, which is looking good. It's got that padding built into it. Now let me see, if we look, you can see we have 23 pixels of corner radius. So we can just say that our border radius is going to be 23 pixels. And now we essentially have like a pixel perfect version that includes all of the border radius and everything, all the padding. It's pixel perfect to the design, which is really good. If you're trying to copy a design that someone created, they have really importantly thought about all the different spacing numbers to make sure they're exactly what they need to be. So it's important that you actually use the numbers from the design if possible. Otherwise, you're going to have weird spacing that they did not account for in the design originally. So right there, I think covers the majority of what we need to do for our card. Now the next step is going to be actually putting the content inside of our card. So let's go back into our HTML. I'll expand this out a little bit more. And if we look at this top section here, we have what others think about the product, and then we have this star section. So inside our header, we're going to have the text what others think about the product. And we're probably going to want to put that inside of something like a span or a div. So we just put that in there for now. And then we're going to have a div here, which is going to be like the average rating section. There we go. And in this average rating section, we're going to have the star icon, and then the 4.8, and then the average customer rating text. So let me just copy this SVG for our star, and I'm going to give it a class here. The class is just going to say star icon, so we can style this. And I want to get rid of the default stroke and fill colors because we're going to add those in our CSS. Let me just get rid of that, copy this. I'm going to paste down our star icon. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have that text 4.8. And we want to make sure that this is going to be in a class. We'll just say like this is our rating. We'll actually call it average rating. There we go. And that's going to be on its own line. And then we're going to have average customer rating, just like that. So hopefully, if I just make this look a little bit cleaner, if I go over here, you can now see we have what others think about the product, and then we have this average rating section down here, and it's pretty small right now. Obviously, this is not ideal. Let me look at the font sizes that they're using for this. We'll just check real quick. Whoops, not delete. There we go. So it looks like the font size here is 34 for this. So we can just come into our styles and we can make sure that our average, or sorry, we'll give this a class here of, whoops, title. We can select our title. Font size is going to be 34 pixels. There we go. Now if we go back over here, it's a little bit bigger, and I'll zoom this in so we can really see this really well. There we go. 150% zoom looks pretty good. And then what we can do is we can select our other elements. So let me just bring this back over, select over here, our 4.8. This is going to be a font size of 26. And also our font family on our title, that is Merriweather, if we remember correctly. So now if I go back over here, it's using that Merriweather font instead, which is ideal. So back to our HTML, we want to style out this average rating, and we want to style out the actual number. So we have our average rating right here is going to be our number. So we have this class that we can use. Average rating, font size for this one is 26 pixels. And we're going to have a font weight of semi-bold, just like that. And semi-bold, I believe, is 500 for the font weight. So now if we save, come over here, scroll down, you can see that we have that 4.8 and the average customer rating. It looks really good. Now the next thing of text that we need to work on is going to be this average customer rating section. So if we go back to our design, we can look and we can see that this is a medium font, which is our default, and it's 14 pixels of size. And if we look at here, it looks like 16, 16. 16 seems to be like our default font size. So we could probably set that as our default font size, and then this one will be set to 14. So in our body, we'll say font size is going to be 16 pixels. That's going to be our default. And then we're going to have whatever we called this section. Let me see, we called it just the average rating section. And we'll say that the font size for this one is going to be 14 pixels. So it's going to be slightly smaller than the rest of the font. And there we go, we have that section done. Now you notice this huge section in the middle of blank space. That's because our star icon is taking up a massive amount of space. So let's come in here, we'll select our star icon. Let's just give it a width of like 20 pixels and a height of 20 pixels. And we'll say that we want to specify the different colors. So inside of our star SVG, what I want to do is a couple things. So in our path, we're going to have specific colors we want to assign to this. So I could just select the path by saying dot star icon path. And honestly, doing it like that is probably not ideal. I should probably just give it a class. So we'll just say class equals icon path. Sure, that works. We could say star icon dot icon path. And now what I can do is I can specify the colors that we want. So we want to have a fill and we want to have a stroke color. So if we just come over here, look at our star, you can see that our fill is this. So we can paste that over. And I don't know if it's actually called stroke or stroke color. Maybe it's just called stroke. We'll see. I'll copy this over, paste that down, see if that gives us what we want. Not quite. Oh, that's because we need to give the class to our path inside of our HTML. It's going to be icon path. There we go. And that looks really good. We can see that we have our star right here. Now, in order to figure out the exact size of our star, you can see this is about 46 pixels by 46 pixels. So we know for a fact our star is going to be 46 pixels in this, and by default in these sections, it's looking about 25 pixels wide. So by default, we want the size to be 25 pixels wide. And then we're going to have a large version of this, which is in our average rating section. We're going to change this to 46 pixels. There we go. So now if we come back over here, you can see we have a much larger star, which looks really good. And if we put another star on our page, I'll just copy this, paste it down here. You should see that that star is smaller because that's our default star size. So that looks really good. That's exactly what we want. Now let's actually style out this whole header section. So let me kind of minimize this down. There we go. First thing I want to do is select that header. I'm going to change the display here to flex. That'll line them up side by side. And then we want this right-hand side to be like auto size, while this text we want to grow to be the full size. So we have our title, which is up here. We could say this should be flex grow of 1. There we go. And then this right-hand section should just be whatever the default size of it ends up being. So if we come over into here, we can kind of select this frame. This frame is this whole entire right-hand side section. And you can see it looks like we have about 17 pixels of spacing on all sides. So if we go to our HTML, this is called the average rating section. So on our average rating section, we can say that our padding is going to be, what did I say, 17 pixels. And we have a background color of white. So we can say background color white. Now if we come over here, you can see that we have that section. If we get the 15 pixels of border radius on it as well, border radius 15 pixels, it should hopefully start to look a lot more like the other design. And as you can see, it starts to look just like that, which is really good. Now we also need to have our box shadow because this has a box shadow around it. It's kind of hard to see, but it does. And an easy way to get box shadow is we can just scroll all the way down here. I'll move my camera. And you can see when I click on this, there we go. You can see that we have 0 pixels, X offset, 7, Y, 20 blur, and then we have this color right here. So we can just copy these values over. This is a really nice thing about working with an actual design program like Figma. It has everything built in. So 0 in the X, 7 pixels in the Y, 20 pixels of blur, 0 pixels of spread, and then we want this color right here. And I'm going to actually convert this to RGB. That'll be a little easier to work with. RGB, so it's going to be RGBA 115, 116, 156, and 0.08. There we go. Now if we come over here, you can see we have that box shadow. And if I crank this up to like a 1, you can see it's really sharp, but we can just bring that back down to that 0.08, and you can see it's a very subtle box shadow. It looks really good. So now let me just bring my camera back into the corner so it's out of the way again. And the next thing we want to work on is getting the rest of the styling for this section to be complete. So this 4.8, we come back over here. We can see that this 4.8 section, it's a semi-bold font. So I'm just going to take this font weight here and move it to my entire section. So that way the entire section has that 500, font weight, which I think looks really good. Next, we want to make sure this section at the top here is going to be centered. So in that average rating, we can use a display, flex, justify content center, and align items in the center. And as you can see, that centered everything. And now we just need to give it a gap to space these out. So if we look here at this frame, we can see that the gap is 8 pixels. So we can say a gap of 8 pixels, and that should hopefully space them out. Oops, there we go. And that'll space them out from each other. Next, this section right here should be as simple as just saying text align center. There we go. That looks really good. Let me see. I don't think there's anything that we need to do. Oh, actually, we should probably add a gap between these two elements. So if we look here at this frame, there's 8 pixels of gap between the top element and the bottom element. So on this top element, margin bottom 8 pixels. Come over back to here, and you can see now we have that space between them. Next up, let's get the spacing between these two items to work, because as we shrink our screen, you can see they're like practically touching each other, which is not ideal. So what I want to do is I want to find the full container, which I believe is our header, and I want to give it a gap. I also want to give it an align items as center, so everything is centered, which will look a little bit better. Let's find that gap. Let me bring this back over to here. we can select that full frame, which is this one, and it has a gap of 80 pixels in the middle here. So we can say gap 80 pixels, and now it's going to put some space between it. So when we shrink this down, you can see we have that proper spacing, but you'll notice that the text over here kind of shrinks. We don't want this to get too small. We want it to have a minimum size. So our average rating section, we're going to give a min width here of, let's say, is maybe 150 pixels. Okay, that actually looks really good. Let me see what they used for their sizing over here. If we click on this, we'll see that they used 162 pixels of width. And the nice thing about certain things in design is that you can actually take some liberty between what you actually do, because normally when it comes to like spacing of elements, you want to keep that pretty consistent. But with sizing of certain things, you'll notice when I change the screen size of this element, it doesn't scale, like nothing is scaling. So obviously this is meant for one screen size, and our design needs to work on every screen size. So I could tweak this number to whatever I think will work, and 150 works pretty well. So we're just going to keep it at 150. And now as I shrink and grow my screen size, you can see that this is actually working really well until we get down to a really small screen size. And then you can see that the padding is just too large and that needs to be reduced. But other than that, this works really well. Now the next section that we should probably be working on, let me expand this back out, is going to be our search bar section. And this search bar is not going to be too complicated, I don't think. It's just an input that has essentially an item added to the left end of the input. That's all that it's going to be. So in our index here, let's just expand this back out to how it was. In our search bar, we're going to have a few different sections. We're going to have our icon, which we can just copy over. That's just SVG right here. I'm going to give it a class of search input icon. And then we're going to have an input, which is going to be a search input. And we don't need to worry about a name or an ID on it. We want to give this a class here, which is search input. There we go. So now we have those two elements. And now all we need to do is actually figure out the sizing for everything. So our actual icon itself is 28 by 28, because right now it's massive. But if we come in here, search icon, I think I call it search input icon. We're going to give it a width 28 pixels, height 28 pixels, and there we go. That shrunk down considerably, which looks really good. Next, we want to figure out the actual sizing for our entire input itself. So if we look at our input, you'll notice that it has padding of 16 pixels. So we'll give this a padding of 16 pixels. Yep, that should be good. And we also need to give it some border radius. We'll say border radius, and in our case, it is 26 pixels, and a background color of white. There we go. We can also select our search input, and I want to give it the same exact padding, border radius, and background color. And I want to give it a font size of, actually, I think the font size on this is just default. 16 pixels, yeah, so it's the default font size. We'll just change the font weight to 500, and I'll say font size is inherit, just to make sure it inherits, because inputs kind of work a little weird. There we go, we have our input right here, which is really good. Now our border radius on our input on the left-hand side shouldn't actually be there. So we can say, and same thing with our padding. So we know that we want our padding left to be 0. We want our border top left radius to be 0. Border top right, actually we just say that the border on the top right. So it was like a border top right, yeah, radius 0. We also want the color, what was it, border top, actually border left. Whoops, border left, none. There we go. I should say bottom left. Okay, there we go. That just cut off the input right there. This is exactly what we want. Yeah, that looks pretty good. For some reason, our border color is changing. That's probably because we haven't specified a border color. Or actually, we haven't even specified a border at all. So our border is going to be 1 pixel solid. And let's check here to see exactly what it is. It is clicking on that frame. Let's see. Does it have a border defined on it? Not there. Oh, there is no border. Okay, sorry. So border, none. That fixes our problem. And then we get rid of the radius. So there we go. We have that section just cut off right there, and we can type inside of it. Looks good. And our padding on the left should actually have some value. Essentially, the padding on the left will be the space between these two elements, which is 10 pixels. So we'll say padding left, 10 pixels. There we go. That way it's just pushed away from the wall right there. And we also probably want there to be no outline on the left. Is there a way to say like outline left? Ah, there is not. Interesting. So we're going to have to do this a slightly different way then, I believe, to make this actually look correct. So we're just gonna have to add extra padding on the left to take into account this section on the left-hand side. And then the search input will have to be positioned absolutely, I believe. Unless we just want it to look like this, which actually may be fine. So let's do that search input then, because right now our search input doesn't look right. Search input icon. We have the width and height of 28 pixels. Padding is 16 pixels. Oh, duh. Let's change our box sizing on this to content box. That'll make it actually show up, which is good. And actually we can just change our height to 100%. Get rid of our width, get rid of the padding. Ooh, that's not quite right. Okay, so we have our search bar. Actually, this is how I'm going to do it. We have our search bar. We can change this to be a display of flex, because I already know I want this to be a display of flex. We can justify align items in the center. Actually, let's say we want them to be stretched, maybe? No, we don't want them to stretch. But we do want them to be in the center, that's good. And we want this thing to, like, shrink. We want it to be the minimum size possible. We want it to essentially be the same size as this input over here. How do we do that? I mean, we could hard code in a height, which is going to be 32 pixels plus our font size, which is 16, so it'd be 48 pixels. I believe that would work. Yeah, that's the exact same size now. So technically that works. And then we just need to change our padding here to whatever the padding is between our icon. So it is that 16 pixels on all sides. So our icon's really small then. So 16 pixels. So our icon height and width is just 16 pixels. There we go. And then our border radius, top right 0. And I think it's border top right radius, there we go. And bottom right. So that they connect together. And that looks pretty good. Now the outline is kind of subjective however you want the outline to be. We could have the outline go all the way around the entire thing, or it can be just around this one section. Also, our colors are not quite lining up because we have that border. Because I didn't take into account our border size, I don't think. So maybe this isn't the best way to do this. I'm trying to think. Yeah, because that just doesn't look right when you do it that way. Maybe we do want it to highlight the entire thing and then just have a bunch of padding on the left. Yeah, let's try that. So we're going to have our search input icon be position absolute. Yeah, and it's going to have a height of 48 pixels with a padding of 16 pixels. That'll still be the same. We don't need to give it a background color or any of this border radius crap. We can get rid of all that. Here we can say that our padding on the left is going to be our 10 pixels plus our 16 pixels is normal padding plus our 48 pixels of size. That was a little bit too big, maybe. Let me see, we could probably get rid of that. That gets them a little bit closer together. This I'm going to give a background color of red, just so we can see. Okay, that does look pretty good then. How does it look over here? Yeah, they're way closer together. They're only 10 pixels apart from each other instead of the full 16. So we have 16 plus the icon size plus 10. That's how it's going to be. So 16 plus the icon size, which is 16 plus another 16 pixels. There we go. Get rid of this background color. And then we just want to set pointer events none. That way we don't accidentally select it. That looks good. And then we can get rid of this weird border stuff. And there we go. Now we have our icon. and it only lets me start typing from there, and I think that looks a lot better. Okay, awesome. I like it. Yeah, that looks really good. So now we just need to position this search bar in the correct location, and I believe, yeah, it's just 100% width. So we can just say width 100%, and then we need to give it some spacing. So on our header, we'll say margin bottom, and let's get that margin bottom value. So our space between these two elements is based on this frame, 56 pixels. There we go. And there we go. Now we have our spacing, which is the exact spacing of the other one. And we should give it a placeholder text as well. So placeholder is equal to this. And there we go. And also, I think we need to change our font weight to be identical. Oh, we've already changed the font weight to 500. Never mind. Is that what we have over here for our font weight? Semi-bold, yep. So that is good. Yeah. Perfect. Next up is going to be the fun section, the rating section. All the different reviews. So if we zoom this in, you can see we have reviews here in this section, and then we have each of our different review sections, which are slightly indented from this review thing, and then we have this button down here. So our review section is going to have the text reviews, and then it's going to have essentially like a review bar, or we'll say review row. Then we'll have our review number 5 with our star icon, which I'm just going to copy and paste. Let's just make this bigger so it's a little easier to see. Then after that, review bar, and then we have our review count, or yeah, we'll say count, which in our case is 106. Okay, look over here, we got 5-star, 106, looks good. And before I start copying down this review arrow, I want to make sure I get 1 to work, and once I get run to work, then I'll copy it down 5 more times. So first of all, what's the space between this and the previous section? So our space between these sections is, drum roll please, 32 pixels. So search bar, margin bottom, 32 pixels. Just so we get that out of the way right away. There we go. Now we're going to have this review section. So yeah, review section. No, we don't need any padding. I'm trying to think, what do we need to do? Probably want to have a no, we could do a, let's look at the spacing here real quick. Make this a little bit larger. So for this review section, each one of these has a spacing between each other of 18 pixels. And there's 16 pixels between this review text and each one of the icons itself. Is that correct? Yeah, I think so. So we know that our review section, and then we have our review row. Our review row should have a margin on the top, or we'll say bottom, of 18 pixels, because that's that sizing. No, we'll do margin top. Yeah, there we go. And then we'll say that our review row, no, we can't do first child. Unfortunately, that won't work. Okay. Yeah, so 18 pixels of margin. And then this one right here, we'll say div class equals review title. There we go. So we can say review title as a margin bottom of 16 pixels. And this will have a margin bottom of 18, except for the last child. Review row last child, margin bottom 0. There we go. That'll hopefully get all of our spacing correct. And now our review row itself, we're going to use Flexbox for, let's see what kind of gap we're working with here. Here's a row. A row has a gap of 8 pixels between the different elements. Yeah, 8 pixels between the elements. This one only has 4 pixels between them. And then Yeah, otherwise everything's 8. So we might just keep it as 8 for everything. We'll say gap 8 pixels. Let's take a look at that. There we go. That gives us our spacing, which looks pretty good. Let's make it so some things show up. First of all, let's look at the font on everything. So this is going to be a bold font on our number. What did we call that? Our review number is going to be font weight bold. Let's look at the other number over here. This is a medium, so that's just our default size, which is fine. So that's good. Okay. We also probably want to align all of our items in the center, I believe. Yeah, that'll probably look the best. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. And now we can select that review bar. The review bar is going to be flex grow of 1. So it's going to fill the full space. Should hopefully space everything out. Yep, it does. We want to give it a border here. And if we look at the numbers for our border on that, it's a little bit hard to see for you, but it's just a 1 pixel border and it's that color. So we're just going to use that color. 1 pixel solid, just like that. And then we're also going to have a background color, which is this fill right here. It essentially just matches our star coloring. We could even move these into CSS variables since they both use the same value, but it's fine for now. So now we have that showing up. Now we just need to give it a set height, which in our case is 10 pixels. 10 pixels. And a border radius is going to be essentially 100%. So we'll just say 100%. I'm sorry, not 100%. We just need to give it a pixel value. That way it gives us the rounded corners. There we go. That is our row done, complete. Let me make sure everything looks the same because there's probably going to be some minor changes we need to make. I don't think it'll work perfectly on the first try, but it actually looks pretty good. Yeah, I'd say it actually looks exactly like we want it to. We don't really need to change anything, I don't think. Cool. Yeah. Actually, no, we do need to change some things because we need to have a partially filled version. So our review bar by default is going to have a background color, which is this background color and that fill. So we'll say review bar background color is going to be this, and the stroke here, you can't see it, but here, move my camera, there you go, you can see the stroke. Border color, whoops, not red, there we go. So we're gonna have our review bar after element. That's going to have this border. Otherwise, we're gonna have this border. Okay. Oops, let me just put this inside here. This will say content, position, absolute, height, 100. Actually, we just say top 0, bottom 0, left 0, and width is going to be a CSS variable. By default, let's set it to 50%. And let me make sure that all of this is correct. Okay, it's clearly not right. We need to make this a position of relative. Okay, there we go. That looks much better. And let me just move my camera back to the right position. There we go. So obviously here our border radius is not quite correct on our after section. Let me just copy that over. Just zoom that in a little bit more. Move my camera so it's not covering it. There we go. Okay, so it's offset inside. It looks like it's like the full width of the border on the inside. So if we like offset by our border width, -1 pixel. That looks like it fixes it. That's good. But I believe our width is no longer going to work. Yeah, at 100% width, you can see it's not wide enough. It doesn't quite get all the way to the end here. So if we come in with a calculation, we add 2 pixels back because that's the size of our border. There we go. That now fills the full space. And we can even turn this into a CSS variable. We'll say like border width is 1 pixel. And all of these are just going to be a calculation of -1 times our border width. We're just going to copy that. And then this is going to be 2 times our border width Okay, so now if we change our border to 2 pixels or like 5 pixels, yeah, it still works. Change it back to 1. There we go. Okay. Let's see now. That looks good, but if we change our width to 0%, it is broken. Yeah, you can see that's broken. And I don't believe there's a good way to get around this without just removing the element entirely. So what I could do is I could say review bar empty after has no content. And that'll remove the element from the page. So if I add the empty class to our bar, that didn't remove it. Let me make sure I spell everything right. Review bar empty after element content nothing. Review bar empty. That should be removing it. I don't know why it's not. Oh, duh. Content should be none. There we go. That removed it. Now if I get rid of that empty class, it'll stay there. So I believe that's exactly what we need. I'm just going to put a default width in here of 10% for now. We'll change this. Actually, I'll just get rid of the default width because obviously we're going to change this to whatever our actual width is. I'm going to get rid of that. And then I think we're ready just to copy this down 5. Actually, no, we need to make sure our review rows have some padding because as you can see on this example, they're inset a little bit from our review here. And unfortunately, based on this design, as you can see, they're using like space for the number itself. Like the number is wide and has extra space. That's where they're getting the space from. So there's no accurate number for us to use. So we'll just say our review row has a padding of like, what's 5 pixels look like? No, it's gotta be longer than that. 12 pixels. How's that look? Oops. That back on there. I think maybe 10 pixels. Yeah, we'll say 10. That looks pretty good. And we need this padding to be on the left and the right. So we'll just say padding left, right. There we go. And now we can just copy this down, I think. So we can take our review row. I'm going to put this inside of a review rows div. And the reason I'm doing that is so in our JavaScript, we can actually add these rows. There we go. We got 5 of them down. And I'm not going to worry about actually styling these out to have the correct numbers because we're going to do all that in JavaScript. So yeah, I'm not going to worry too much about that. Now I am going to move my camera back to where it was, zoom this back out. And the last thing we have to work on for our CSS is this write a review button, which is going to be very easy, much easier than everything we've done so far. So right here, I'm going to change this to a button. And it's going to say write a review. There we go. Review button background color. And let's get that background color. It is just right here. There we go. Close that all out. Our actual color is white. Border radius is just a large number. Padding. Let's check out what our padding is supposed to be on this thing. Padding is 24 pixels on the left and right and 16 on the top and bottom. Never remember which order this goes in, so I'm going to see what this looks like. And then I will swap it and see which one's the correct one. There we go. That's definitely the correct way to do it. That looks good. Let's check our font size on this button. It's 16 pixels. So I'm going to make sure our font size inherits because buttons kind of do some weird stuff. Same with font family. I want that to inherit. There we go. So it's properly using the right font. Also, our review section needs to have margin on the bottom. And I believe it shares the same margin as the rest of our sections. Yeah, it's its own distinct section. So it shares the same margin as between up here and down there. Okay. Is there anything else we need to do to our button at all? I mean, that is essentially the button right there. We should probably give it a cursor of pointer. And we should probably give it a hover state. So we'll say review button, hover, background, color. Let's see here. Oops. Let me convert this to HSL. And then we can just change, for example, the lightness to 39%. There we go. And we don't want a border. So we'll say border, none. Looks good. Maybe we change it to 29%. There we go. Pretty subtle effect for when you hover over the button. I think it's good enough. Okay. And does it have an outline? It does. The outline's hard to see though, so we'll say outline color is going to be a really bright version of this. So like 59, maybe even brighter. 79. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. That way you can kind of see that it's outlined. It's not the best thing in the world, but it works. Okay. There we go. That is our entire card section. Obviously, ours is much wider than it maybe normally will be, but that is fine. Now is going to be the fun part, which is the JavaScript. Because with the JavaScript, I want to create really awesome animations for everything. I want to make our thing slide in. I want to make this number count up, these numbers count up. I want awesome, cool animations for everything. So, JavaScript. Let's get that file imported at the very top here. Script.js, defer the load of that, and now we're into here. So I want to get our review bar container. We'll just call it review bars container. That is document.query selector review bars. There we go. And then I also want to be able to create a review bar, I believe. I think what we can do is, okay, I'm going to go back into my HTML. I know I said I wouldn't hard code all these, but I think I actually will, because we already know for a fact that there is going to be 4 like bars. So or 5 bars, sorry. There's going to be 5 total bars, and by default, they're all just going to have no review count in any of them. So this is going to be 3, get rid of that, 2, get rid of that, 1, get rid of that. There we go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and our counts are not going to be there. So by default, this is what all of our bars are going to look like. And we're going to come in and actually add in the code that we need to make them look correct. Also, you'll notice our spacing is a little off. This bottom star is farther to the left than the rest of them. I'm trying to think why that might be. I believe it's because our 1 is slightly smaller. I think if we change, where is that at? Review bar, review number. I think there's like a tabular number format. Font variant, maybe? No, it's something under font. Font display? No. Feature, variant, ligatures, size adjust. Font display. Let me just see. Tabular nums CSS. Font variant numeric. And we want tabular nums. There we go. I knew what the actual property was, but not the actual name of it. This should hopefully give all of our numbers the same width. Looks like it didn't actually work. I thought that's what that did. Let me just look this back up. CSS controls uses alternate glyphs for numbers. So there's slash. Tabular, yeah, they should all be the exact same width. That's what it's showing right here. Maybe it's not being applied to the correct thing. Let me make sure that's what I called it. Review number, yeah. Let me inspect this. Pull this over. The review number has a height and width of 5.8 is the width. This one has a width of 9.9, 9.5, 10, 10.3. Okay, it's not doing the tabular nums thing like I expected it would. Oops, style. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be doing anything. I wonder if this font doesn't support this CSS property. That could be. Let's change the font family to just sans serif. Yeah, now you can see they're all the exact same size. So I think it's just this font doesn't support it. So I'm going to give this a hard-coded width of 11 pixels. And we can get rid of this. There we go. So now they're all the exact same size. And we'll just say text align end. That way they align on the right-hand side. Perfect. And we also probably need to do the same thing with our review count as well, because if we have different numbers, I'll test this out. We'll just say this is 10. And this one up here is going to say 1,000. Yeah, you can see our bars are different sizes. Not ideal. It's almost like we should use CSS Grid for this instead of Flexbox now that I'm thinking about it. Do I really want to go through and change all of that? Probably should. It isn't going to be very hard because we have our review bars. Change the display here to grid. Grid template columns is going to be auto, 1FR, because we want that to expand, and auto. There we go. We can get rid of this display flex. We can even get rid of our gap because we know that here we're going to have a gap. What is it? Column gap of 8 pixels. Row gap is 16 pixels. I think so. No, it's 18 pixels. There we go. So we can get rid of this margin bottom. We can even add our padding on the left as 10 pixels. Padding right, 10 pixels. Get rid of this entire section right there. Same thing with our view title. We can just say margin top 16 pixels. Get rid of this. And we can get rid of the width on that. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. That should be correct. Oh, we need subgrid for it, technically. Oh, that's a pain, because we're using these review rows. Do we have any styles that select our review rows specifically? We do not. So I can remove the div that wraps everything. Do that for all of them. That should hopefully line them up. It did not. Get this indented properly. Whoops. Let go of my cursor. Sorry, this is a little bit annoying that we had to change all this, but I think it'll look better. So I called this review rows. That is probably my problem. Review rows. There we go. And now we just need to get all of our spacing. So like justify items center. No. We don't want to justify the items in the center. We want to align the items in the center. There we go. Now they all take up the right amount of space, which is exactly what we want. And then we can say here for review number, we want to justify self flex end. That way they'll line up on the right-hand side, which is good. So if we had one of these numbers said like 15, all the rest are going to line up on the right. Okay, that fixes all of our problems, and CSS Grid is amazing. There you go. So our review rows container. Yeah, review row container. Review rows. Okay. So yes, now we're on JavaScript. So I'm just going to create an object that has, it's going to be called reviews. This is just like our placeholder. So for 5-star reviews, we're going to have 120 of them. 4-star is going to be 40. 3-star is going to be 20. 2-star, 0. 1-star, 0. There we go. So our average review is just reviews. What do we need to do? We need to do object. Whoops. Object.entries of reviews. I want to reduce this. And this is going to be getting our sum. And it's going to be getting each one of our reviews. So it'd be key and the value. So the key would be our like review amount. We'll say value and quantity. There we go. What I think I can do is I can just return sum plus value times quantity. And we'll get our total reviews. That is going to be our total. So our total reviews is just going to be object.entry or values of reviews. Reduce this down. I'll explain what I'm doing here in just a second, sorry. Value return sum plus value. Default this to 0. Default that to 0. Okay, so our average review is this divided by our total reviews. So this first number, I'm just counting up all of our reviews. So in our case, 120 plus 40 plus 20 is going to give us 180. And then down here, I'm getting the average review by multiplying these two numbers. So 5 times 120, 4 times 40, 3 times 20, 2 times 0, 1 times 0. And then I'm dividing that by the total number of reviews. And this will give us our average review from 1 star all the way up to 5 stars. So yeah, and the reason I'm turning this into a variable here is because we're probably going to use it in other places. So now with our average review, we can actually just set that value in our HTML. So here, this is our average review. So we could just say div class equals average review. Actually, I'm going to choose a data attribute for this. Data average review. And inside of our JavaScript, const average review element document.query selector data average review. There we go. And now we can just say average review dot text content equals average review. And we probably went around that. So we could say, let's do a number formatter. No, we could just round it, that's fine. This times 10 divided by 10. There we go. Perfect. So it's 4.6 stars. If we add a bunch of, 1-star reviews, that's dropping our average. Good. So now what we can do is we can fill in all of our bars. So review rows container dot for each row. But Anna, this isn't going to quite work. We want a query selector all of the because this is a little bit of a pain. Let me just minimize this to show you what I'm talking about. So in our review section, we have our rows, and we essentially want to get the bar and count for a particular number. So let's get all of the bars, and then the next child is the count. That'll work. So I want to get all the review bar. Okay, so then we can for each over each bar. And then I can say here that our count element is equal to bar.next element sibling. There we go. So our count element dot inner, we'll say text content is equal to, oh gosh, because we need to get, okay, we need the index as well. Index, there we go. This probably would be better to do all in JavaScript now that I think about it. So let me just select all of this. I'm going to paste this into our JavaScript and just comment it out, because I think I'm just going to construct this entire thing in JavaScript. I think it'll be a little bit easier that way. Yeah. Okay. So actually, instead of commenting that out, I'm going to turn it into a string. There we go. And let's just fix all the spacing. There we go. So I can say const, let's do star icon. I want to just get the star icon as the string. So this can get moved to there. These can get moved to there. Comment this out. And the reason I'm doing this star icon as a string is just so it's a little bit easier to work with. I don't want to have to write the JavaScript to create that entire thing. So we have our star icon right here as HTML. Okay, so now what we can do is we can loop through our reviews. So reviews, object.entries, .map, actually for each, we have a key value, which is, what do we call this? Value quantity. There we go. So const review number equals document dot create element div review number dot text content equals our value, and review number dot class list dot add review number. I'm just creating this div right here. And then I can say review rows container dot append review number. There we go. You can see it added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to reverse the way that we count through this though, because I want it to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I'm going to do a quick dot sort A, B. I think I could just do A minus B, and that might sort it the right way. Nope. B minus A. I didn't sort it either. Oh, it's because sort is annoying. It doesn't actually return an array. Like, let me see. Method mutates the array and returns a reference to the same array. So it should actually still work. Why is this not sorting? A minus B. Let me just print this out real quick to see what this looks like. I'm never super good with the sort function, to be honest. I don't use it too often. Okay, console. So it's an array. It goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I sort the other direction, B minus A. Oh, duh. I need... Okay, so this is why my problem is. This is A key, A val. I only care about the key, right? So I can just say A, B. This should fix it. There we go. Now that's sorted in the right direction. The reason why is that this is an array of 2 elements. I just need the first element. Okay. Fixed that problem. So now it's saying 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Next up, I need the star icon. So we could say review rows dot append star icon. I need to get the review bar. So I can just copy this. Review bar. There is no text content. The class num here is going to say review bar. And review bar dot class list dot toggle. I want to add the empty class only if our quantity is equal to 0. There we go. And I want to append it. And I need to define our star icon at the top of our page. Oh, I need it to append as HTML. Oh, that's a pain. I don't know if there's a way to append it as HTML. Yeah, so instead what I need to do, create a star icon wrapper document dot create element div star icon wrapper inner HTML equals star icon. There we go, that fixed it. So essentially I just created a brand new element, pasted the HTML into that element of the star, and then added that. It's a little bit of a workaround that we have to do, potentially. Even though it does look like we're getting an error. Let me see what that error is. Inspect, error. Star icon wrapper is not defined. Oh, duh, star icon, not start. Okay, but it did work. You can see we now have our stars showing up. And our review bar dot style dot set property. We want to set the width property here to our width, which is just going to be our quantity divided by our total reviews times 100. And we want that as a percentage. So percent. There we go. That should hopefully work. So now all we need is the review count, which is going to work just like our review number. Copy that down. Review count. Count. There we go. And this should say quantity. There we go. Now in our index, I can just take everything inside our review rows, get rid of it. And now they're being dynamically created inside of our JavaScript. So now if we change something in our JavaScript, for example, I add in 20 2-star reviews, they show up. Perfect. Now all I need to do is add in the really cool animations, which I don't think is going to be too hard. So first, we can animate this width property really easily on this bar, because we can just say transition is going to be 500 milliseconds, ease out, and we want to transition on the width property. Let's see if that works. Not quite. Oh, it's because it's coming into the page with that width already. Ooh. So we'll just do the animation then in JavaScript, that's fine. Or should we? I'm trying to think. Yeah, we can just do the animation in our JavaScript. So let me get rid of this console log. We essentially want to do like a request animation frame of our update. Function update. And at the bottom, request animation frame update. That'll give us an animation frame we can use. And this is going to have like a time. There we go, that'll work. Because we essentially want these numbers to increment, and we want this bar to fill, and we want this number to increment to a specific value. What is the best way to do that? I'm trying to think here. I got an idea. Okay, so on each element that we want there to be an end value, we just specify the end value. So we can say review number. Actually, no, we want review count, right? So let's come down here to review count. Dot data set dot end value is equal to our quantity. And by default, our quantity starts at 0. Okay, so now inside of our update, we can get const update elms equals review, document dot query selector all, where we have a data end value. So everything that has this end value property is going to be selected. And then we can just say update elms dot for each element. I want to get the current value. Dot data set dot current value. Const end value. Make sure I do this right. Okay, so now we have the current and the end value, and I want to essentially increment it by a certain amount of time, so like the time that has passed. So we'll say let delta, if delta equals null, then we do something, otherwise we do all of this stuff. So if delta is null, I don't want to do anything if delta is null. Yeah, so we can say if delta is not equal to null, then do this. And at the bottom we can say, let me think. So our time is going to be a certain value, and we just subtract it from our previous. So our delta is going to be equal to time minus last time. So I need to record our last time. There we go. Okay. And then only do this if last time is not equal to null. And at the bottom, we can just say last time equals time. Okay, now that'll get us the time between these different things happening. And if we just say const duration is equal to like 500, that'd be 500 milliseconds. Then what we can do is we can say our const new current value is equal to current value. We need a start value though, don't we? Yeah, so our start value for everything is 0. So I guess we don't have to worry about that. We know the start value is 0. So we can just take our elm.dataset.end value times, oh, we can just do time divided by 500 maybe? No, we'll do times delta plus lm dot data set dot current value. Yeah, that should work. And we want to do a quick math.min of either that value or our end value. We never want it to be larger than our end value. There we go. Now we can say lm dot dataset dot current value equals new current value. That'll work. That'll update that current value over a 1 second period. So for now, let me just check lm dot text content equals that. Let's see if this does anything. Doesn't look like it. Let's make the duration really long, 5,000. That doesn't seem to do it either. Let's call this a time offset. The time offset, if time offset is not equal to null, then we can do this. We don't need a delta. Time offset is equal to our first time. So then we can just have like const time elapsed equals time minus time offset. That'll give us the time since this started. Okay. And then we can say, we can put this into here, and if our time elapsed is greater than or equal to our duration, then return. That way we don't continue our animation. Okay, that's good, that's good, that's good. So now this should be using just that current value. This should be using the end value. So now we can just do our end value times our duration, or sorry, what is it? What do we call it? Time elapsed. There we go. Okay, I'm guessing we're getting an error. Let me just look at our code. Not getting any errors. So each frame this is being updated, and we're getting the minimum value of either our end value times our time elapsed. Oh, divided by our duration. There we go. They are counting up over the course of 5 different seconds, which is exactly what we want, and then we get to that point. Perfect. Okay, now what we need to do is round that number. So math.round, and we're going to round this to a whole number. Whoops. There we go. Perfect, that's counting up. We have a little bit of jankiness going on because of the width. That's that tabular nums thing. We can't really fix that, but if we make this a small enough duration, like 500 milliseconds, you're not going to notice it too much. So that looks really good. Don't even need this current value. Don't need that current value. Now we just need to make the rest of our things update correctly, because this one doesn't use text content. This one needs to be rounded to a different number. That's kind of a pain. So we're just going to say this is update count, and this is our dot review count that have an end value. Okay. I'm going to do essentially the exact same thing for the rest of our elements. So update count. So I just want to copy this code, paste it down. I'll move this down to here. This is going to be called update average. And it's not really ideal. No, we can do these all in one function. We can do these all in one update function. Yeah. We have our time elapsed. We have our current value. Yeah. I think this will be fine. So we don't need to even store the current value. That's not useful. So here we have our count elements, just like that. Then we're going to do essentially the exact same thing for our average, and this is just a single element. So this is dot review count. dot average rating. And actually, I think we already have that element selected. Yeah, we do. Average review. So this one, we just need to get that new value. So we can just make a function for that. Function get new value. This takes in an element, and it's going to take in, actually just take in an end value and time elapsed. There we go. Get new value. So this one would be dot text content equals math dot round const new average. Okay, so get new value of average review element dot data set dot end value and then time elapsed. Okay, so the new average times 10 divided by 10, that'll give us the rounded version. And I need to make sure we set the actual thing. So where's our average being set? Here it is. We can set this like that, and then the text content is going to be 0. That kind of worked. Not 100% like I wanted it to. Let's change our get new value function. Oh, obviously, the reason it's not working is our get new value function doesn't do anything. So let's get rid of this math.round on here. We don't want that. We want this to return that. We don't need that. There we go, that did count up perfectly. So get new value. Here we can call that same new value function, pass it in our elem.dataset.end value and our time elapsed. And this one we're just gonna round. Math.round, there. Okay, those are all adding up correctly. And then we can do the exact same thing for our review bar. So here we can say review bar dot dataset dot end value is equal to this. And then we can copy that. We'll paste it just down here for now, because I'm going to need that in just a second. But we essentially want to do the same thing we did with our count elements. I'm going to copy the code for our count elements. This is going to be for our review bars. Review bar. We don't really care about rounding this number. It really doesn't matter if we round this one or not. But we need to convert it to a percentage. Percent, and we need to do this, review bar.set property width. So we called it elem. There we go. Get rid of that code right there. Now we have this perfectly counting up, and we can change the duration. We can make it really quick, 250. We can make it slow, you know, a whole second. Yeah, I like this. This looks really cool. So now we just, yeah, every time we save, we have these really cool animations that are going to play, and everything counts up. It just looks really cool. If you enjoyed this video, I have another one just like this where I try to create a multi-step form from scratch. It's linked over here. With that said, thank you very much for watching and have a good day.